Another thing we have is the output. With this, now there's a plug-in on the flight controller which you can control. I've got LED set up, and I've got POTI 4 and POTI 3. So POTI 4 is channel 8, and wrong one. The altitude. So the altitude control is POTI. Let's say POTI 3, and POTI 4 is the 3-switch one. Actually, I have those backwards. So POTI 3 is channel 7, POTI 4 is channel 8. And so the idea behind this is I have the LEDs enabled so that when I enable altitude hold, the LEDs will light up. And if I enable the GPS switch, it'll be enabled. So, but because it's a three-way switch, what will happen is if I go to just the middle switch position from free to position hold, the lights will actually flicker on and off in a slow rate. And then if I go to the third position, I've come home, the GPS lights will go on all the way. And right now I have it enabled so that the lights will only go on after I initialize the motors. Another interesting kind of a cool feature is that when we have the copters up there flying and we get a low voltage warning, I've got it so that the lights start blinking off and on. And so there's two outputs here. I've got, for output 1, I've got 3 sets of LEDs that are underneath 3 arms, and in output 2 I have the other 3. So each arm of the copter has a set of 6 lights underneath it. So they'll go flashing on back and forth if if the batteries are under voltage. And the altitude tab, this is where we set the altitude. I've got it mapped at POTI 4. And there's a number of settings that you would have to dial in, and this all has to do with how much weight it is, how much weight the copter's carrying, the batteries, and the wind conditions, and all sorts of variables go into this. So it takes a while to dial a lot of these pieces in. And what do we got here? Gas, minimum gas. There's emergency gas. What happens is this one here, for instance, is if you have a signal loss from the receiver, that after 110 milliseconds, it'll initiate the emergency gas, and I've got it at an 80 numeric value, the analog value here. And what should happen is the copter should start lowering out of the sky rather than just crashing. And anytime we make a change, we can save it to a file. I can do this and just save an MKP file. But I also, if I wanted to actually take place, I can write it to the copter directly by pushing the button here. And you can hear the beeps when it gets written to. The nice thing about having the remote connection, using this remote connection, is that you can actually make changes while the copter's in the air, write it to it, and have it take effect right away, rather than have the copter come down and do the changes manually or connecting directly to the copter. It saves a lot of time. Okay, so the scope we can do is take a lot of measurements, a number of measurements while the copter's flying, or at least when you're running it. And I can kind of scroll down here a bit. You've got a number of different settings or things that you can keep an eye on here. Let's put a couple of more motors on it. It tests 4 motors. And once that's done, we can do start. And what we should start seeing is some output on the screen. There we go. Alright, so while we're reading some scope data, we can actually go and start some of the motors. So let's go to motor 1. And motor 1 is the red motor, the red arm, motor number 1. And I can do this without starting and initializing it. And I don't want to hit the thing. And I can do, let's do number 5, which is, number 6 rather, which is this one here. I just want to make sure that I'm not going to hit anything. And you can see while we're running the motors, we're also getting some input here. And I'm not running them very high, but this is good for debugging any problems you may be having with one or more of the motors. You can actually, in some cases, you may want to, if you're going to give it full throttle, you want to either hold it down, the copter down, or you can actually take the blades off and give it full throttle and do your tests while it's on the ground to see how it's behaving, and you can do a fair amount of debugging with. And here we can turn on the 3D mode, and here we can see the orientation of the copter, so it kind of follows it around. And this allows you to see the orientation while the copter is flying with the remote connection. It's not always easy to see what direction the copter is facing, and you have to, while flying in most modes, you really have to know what direction you are flying in order to be able to direct it left to right or up or down in the right way. So that's kind of a useful tool for when it gets really high in the sky and you want to see which ways it's facing. Also has a small balancing tool when you have batteries and other equipment, cameras, etc., hanging underneath. You want to be able to configure the balance and help to get the center of gravity towards the center. I also wanted to show you how the LEDs work when they're set up with the altitude hold and GPS configuration switches. What I did is I set it up so that the motors did not have to start in order for me to be able to turn on the LEDs. So let's turn off this light here. And with the altitude hold, I've got the front light on and these two arms here. And with the GPS, I've got the other 3 sets, so I've got these two here and the back one, and they stay on solid. And just to let you see the underneath here. And I put these two back here at the back of the copter, so again you can see it which way is the front, which way is the back, and so at a distance I should be able to see the back side of it even while it's broad daylight.